Welcome, dear listener, to Sleepy Story Facts, where tonight's sleep story drifts gently over the darkened ocean, and then slowly, softly, lovingly below its surface, into a world of pressure, depth, and quiet zones. A bedtime story shaped like a tide, a nighttime story designed to loosen the day from your thoughts, and a relaxing story that moves at the unhurried pace of deep water, where everything seems to slow, soften, and settle into a deeper rhythm. So before we begin our calm descent, let yourself get comfortable. Let your shoulders lower by the smallest degree. Let your jaw unclench. Let the muscles around your eyes grow heavy, and imagine that you are wrapped in a warm blanket on the deck of a peaceful research vessel. The sky above you dim with velvet blue. The sea around you breathing in long and even swells, as if the whole planet were resting with you. And for the next little while, there is nowhere to go, nothing to solve, nothing to carry, because this gentle bedtime journey asks almost nothing from you except that you listen lightly. And even that is optional, because you may simply float on the sound of the words and fall asleep whenever sleep decides to arrive. Now take one slow breath in, easy and unforced, and let it leave just as slowly. And as you do, picture the ocean at night, not wild, not stormy, but calm and vast and deeply patient, its surface catching only a little silver from a hidden moon, while below that surface begins one of the quietest and most extraordinary landscapes on Earth, a place where sleepy science facts become calming narration, where depth is not something to fear, but something to wonder at, because the ocean is layered like a lullaby, each level softer and dimmer than the one before. And in the first moments of our descent, we notice one of the ocean's gentlest truths. Pressure increases with depth, slowly and steadily, because water has weight, and every meter down adds a little more of that soft, invisible burden, so that the sea, without hurrying, becomes denser in feeling, more embracing, almost like a heavier blanket being drawn over the world. Near the surface, waves and wind still whisper to each other, and light still filters down in blue ribbons. But even here, the ocean is already teaching us its calmest lesson, which is that quiet comes in layers, because sound, light, motion, and temperature all change as you sink, and the upper ocean, touched by the day, gives way little by little to regions where the sun can no longer reach, and where the sea keeps its own slow time as our imaginary vessel lowers us gently into this underwater night. We pass through water that once seemed empty from above, yet is full of delicate order, with drifting plankton, silver flashes of tiny fish, and columns of sinking marine snow. That beautiful name scientists give to the constant fall of organic particles through the sea. A soft snowfall of the ocean made from fragments of life above, descending day and night through the dark in a motion so slow and steady that it feels almost made for a sleep story. Deeper still, the pressure grows more noticeable in our scientific imagination, not as discomfort, but as a fact of presence, because at around 10 meters below the surface, the pressure is roughly double what it is at sea level, and then it keeps building, layer by layer, until the deep ocean becomes one of the most pressurized places on the planet. Yet life still lives there, adapts there, glows there, rests there in its own patient way, and there is something deeply soothing in that. The reminder that nature has learned to inhabit even the heaviest silences. Now the colors begin to fade, first the reds, then the oranges and yellows, because different wavelengths of light are absorbed at different depths, and the ocean, in its sleepy wisdom, edits the visible world down to blues, and then to darkness, as if dimming the room for the whole globe. And this fading of color is not a loss so much as a transition into another kind of beauty, one built not on brightness, but on hush, where the mind can stop reaching outward and begin drifting inward. Somewhere below us lies what many think of as the midnight zone, where sunlight disappears entirely, and the sea becomes a place of internal glimmers, patient creatures, and enormous quiet. And yet, even that darkness is not empty, because the deep ocean carries sound in curious ways, sometimes over astonishing distances, through channels shaped by temperature and pressure, including the famous deep sound channel, where certain low-frequency sounds can travel far with very little loss, turning the sea into a vast, resonant chamber, a hidden hallway of whispers beneath the world. And then there are the quiet zones, not official in every poetic sense perhaps, but real in spirit and often real in measurement. Regions where human noise is reduced, where distance from shipping lanes and storms allows the ocean's subtler voices to emerge. The soft clicking of distant animals, the low shifting of currents, the almost imagined hush of water pressing against itself. And here, in this calm nighttime story, those quiet zones become a sanctuary for thought, for rest, for the long unclenching that leads toward deep sleep. Perhaps the most comforting fact of all is that the deep ocean does not rush, because rush belongs more to the surface world, to weather and schedules and clocks, while below, movement becomes gradual, measured in drifts, in migrations, in currents that may take years to complete their cold, planet-circling paths. And so, as we continue to fall asleep together, held by this relaxing story and the ocean's slow science, you may imagine yourself drifting not downward in any alarming way, but downward as a feather might settle in dark blue water, with complete safety, complete softness, and complete permission to become heavy with rest, because tonight the sea is not asking you to explore it, only to borrow its rhythm, its darkness, its pressure-like comfort, its miles of quiet, and to let all of that gather around you like a gentle bedtime tide, until your thoughts are as dim and peaceful as the deepest water, and your body, listening to this calming narration, remembers how natural it is to let go, to float, to soften, and finally, whenever it wishes, to fall asleep. Now that you have settled into the gentle rhythm of this sleep story, let us continue our slow descent into the ocean's middle hush, where the surface has become only a memory of silver, and where the water around us deepens from blue into a softer, dusk-like indigo, as though the sea itself were preparing a room for rest. And here, one of the most relaxing sleepy science facts begins to unfold, because this region, often called the Twilight Zone, is not fully bright and not fully dark, but suspended in a peaceful in-between. place where daylight is filtered into tenderness, and where every movement seems slower than it was above, more thoughtful, more quiet, more dreamlike. And as this bedtime story drifts downward, you may imagine the ocean around you as an immense cathedral of calm, held up not by stone, but by water, with wide blue columns and endless stillness, while somewhere far above, waves continue without needing your attention at all. In these depths, sunlight has weakened so much that colors begin to lose their certainty. And this is because water absorbs light gradually, welcoming the reds first, then the oranges, then the golds, until much of the world is translated into muted blues. And there is something deeply soothing in that soft subtraction, as if the ocean were gently dimming every lamp one by one, creating the perfect nighttime story environment for a tired mind that no longer wishes to stare at brightness, but would rather rest inside shade. And the farther we drift, the more the sea teaches that less can feel like peace. Another quiet fact waits here in the water's changing temperature, because the ocean is not equally warm from top to bottom, and many regions contain a thermocline, a layer where temperature drops more quickly with depth, a gradual coolness that feels, in imagination, like stepping from the warmth of late evening into the cool side of a pillow. And below that layer, the water becomes much more stable, much less influenced by the quick moods of weather, so that the deep sea can preserve its chill for centuries, holding old cold water in a patient global circulation that moves through the planet with the unhurried grace of sleep itself. As this relaxing story carries you deeper, pressure continues its slow accumulation, steady as a lullaby. And while at the surface, we live beneath only the weight of the atmosphere, down here the ocean adds its own layered embrace meter by meter, until each descending stretch brings another subtle increase. And yet the remarkable softness of this fact is that the creatures who belong here are not troubled by it in the way we might expect, because their bodies are exquisitely adapted to the sea's weight, shaped by evolution to live in conditions that sound extraordinary to us, but are entirely ordinary to them. And perhaps that is one of the gentlest truths in all of ocean science, that life does not merely survive in quiet extremes. It learns to make a home there. You may picture small fish with silver sides turning almost invisibly in the dimness, and drifting jelly-like forms carrying themselves with barely a gesture. Because in the twilight, ocean energy is precious and wasted motion is rare. And this is another beautiful bedtime lesson from the sea, that not everything must hurry, not every life must blaze, not every presence must announce itself loudly to be meaningful. For down here, much of existence is soft, efficient, and nearly silent, which makes this calm descent feel less like travel and more like being sung into stillness by water itself. All around us, marine snow continues to fall, those tiny particles of organic material descending from the sunlit world above, a constant fine shower through the dim blue, feeding deeper ecosystems and linking the whole ocean together in one slow exchange. And if you let yourself imagine it closely, it may look like a winter night turned upside down, not snow coming from clouds, but softness sinking through water, the the entire sea participating in a quiet and endless drift. And that image alone is enough to make a gentle bedtime mood settle more deeply in the body, because everything here seems to move downward without effort, without alarm, without resistance. Some animals in these waters have large eyes to gather what little light remains, while others produce their own faint glow through bioluminescence, not in the flashy way of a city, but in the delicate way of a candle behind a curtain, a brief living lantern in the blue dark. And even this science can feel like calming narration, because the deep ocean does not create light to disturb the night, only to whisper within it, to communicate, to attract, to survive, each pulse small and temporary, like a thought appearing and fading before sleep. And as we pass through this soft-bellied part of the sea, it becomes easier to understand why the ocean can feel so meditative. Because the farther we move from the surface, the farther we move from suddenness, from wind, from glare, from the hard edges of the day, until what remains is rhythm, depth, coolness, and distance. And these are such restful companions for anyone hoping to fall asleep, especially when held inside a slow sleep story like this one, where fact after fact arrives not as information to memorize, but as a tide to float upon, a gentle bedtime current carrying you away from lists and clocks and unfinished thoughts. So let your breathing become as measured as the water around you. Let your mind widen into this blue spaciousness, and let the twilight zone, with its fading colors, its patient cold, its drifting marine snow, and its quietly adapted life, remind you that the world contains vast, peaceful places untouched by hurry. Places where even pressure feels like a form of holding. And as we continue downward toward darker and quieter waters, you do not need to do anything at all except listen lightly, soften fully, and allow this nighttime story to guide you one calm fact at a time toward deep sleep. As our gentle sleep story continues, we now drift beyond the last soft blue traces of the twilight waters and into the midnight zone, where the sun no longer reaches at all, and where the ocean seems to exhale into a deeper stillness, a wider hush, a calmer kind of darkness than most waking minds ever imagine. And here, in this soothing bedtime story, the dark is not emptiness, but comfort, not absence, but shelter, because the deep sea has a way of removing distractions so completely that what remains feels simple and kind, like the moment in the night when the house is silent, the air is cool, and every thought begins to loosen at the edges. By now, the pressure around us has become immense in scientific terms, rising steadily with depth until, at around 1,000 meters, it reaches roughly 100 times the pressure at sea level. And yet, because this is a relaxing story and not a hurried lesson, we can let that fact settle slowly, almost musically, as a reminder that the ocean is a place where even invisible forces can become profound, where water itself presses with a constant and patient hand, and where life has learned not to resist that weight, but to belong inside it. The creatures here are not armored in the way old adventure tales might suggest, but often soft, flexible, and marvelously adapted. Because in the deepest water, rigidity can be less useful than grace, and so many animals of the midnight zone live with gelatinous tissues, reduced skeletons, or carefully balanced chemistry that allows their cells and proteins to keep working under the quiet burden of all that sea above them. And there is something incredibly restful in realizing that nature does not always answer pressure with struggle, but sometimes with softness. Around us, the water is cold now, usually only a few degrees above freezing, yet not in a sharp or hostile way, rather in the serene way of ancient cold, stable cold, the kind that has remained nearly unchanged for very long stretches of time. And because the deep ocean is separated from the surface's busy weather, it can preserve this calm thermal stillness like a sleeping room preserved from noise, where the temperature barely shifts and the rhythm of existence is slow enough to feel almost outside the ordinary clock of day. Here, too, we find one of the loveliest sleepy science facts of all, which is that no photosynthesis happens in this darkness because sunlight is gone, and so the deep ocean depends on what drifts down from above, or on rare chemical processes near special seafloor environments, meaning that much of the midnight zone lives on the patient economy of marine snow, on fragments and falling nourishment, on the gentle downward gift of the upper ocean. And this creates a world where waiting, conserving, and moving carefully are not weaknesses, but wisdom. Some animals save energy by floating almost motionless, others by opening large mouths and trusting the water to bring food near, and many spend long periods in profound quiet, which makes this region feel especially suited to a nighttime story, because everything here seems to understand the art of doing less, of wasting nothing, of allowing long intervals of stillness to be part of life rather than interruptions to it. Sometimes, in the far dark around us, tiny lights appear and vanish, soft blue-green glimmers made by bioluminescent organisms. And these living lights are among the deep sea's most magical realities, yet even they behave with restraint, blinking, trailing, or pulsing in ways that feel less like performance and more like whispering, as if the ocean, though dark, still wished to decorate its silence with the smallest possible lanterns. And perhaps that is why these waters can feel so dreamlike to imagine, because they combine darkness and light in exactly the right proportions for a mind that is ready to fall asleep. Another deeply calming fact is that the ocean becomes quieter here, not because sound disappears, but because the surface world grows distant, and without waves breaking overhead, without bright wind and constant motion, the deep water seems insulated from haste, so that what remains are subtler sounds, distant animal calls, faint shifts in water masses, and the almost impossible softness of a vast liquid world resting within itself. And when scientists map or listen to parts of the deep sea far from heavy shipping traffic, they sometimes find acoustic environments so gentle that the ocean begins to seem like a giant sleeping chamber, a place where even sound has learned to lower its voice. It is also here that many creatures participate in one of Earth's grandest hidden rhythms, the daily vertical migration, in which countless animals rise toward shallower waters at night and sink again by day, a planetary movement so large It is often described as the biggest migration on Earth. Yet, because it happens mostly in darkness and mostly out of sight, it remains beautifully secret, a commuting tide of life that unfolds with extraordinary regularity and almost no drama. And the more we imagine it, the more peaceful it becomes. This notion that beneath the noisy human world there is another rhythm entirely, billions of small lives moving up and down with the patience of breath. As this gentle bedtime descent carries us onward, you may begin to feel that the midnight zone is not truly alien at all, but simply another form of quiet room, one with colder air, heavier blankets, and dimmer lamps than the rooms we know above. And if you let your thoughts soften with that image, then pressure becomes a kind of holding, darkness becomes a kind of privacy, and distance becomes a gift, because down here there are no urgent messages, no sharp corners of daylight, no need to do anything except drift through this calming narration and let the facts arrive one by one like slow drops of water into still water, each one widening the circle of rest a little more, until your mind, like the deep ocean itself, becomes spacious, dark, quiet, and wonderfully untroubled, ready for deep sleep, ready to be carried farther into the soft unknown, ready to sink not into fear, but into peace. And now, as this gentle bedtime story continues its calm descent, we arrive in a part of the ocean where silence does not mean emptiness, but rather a softer kind of listening, a place where water, temperature, and pressure work together so delicately that sound can sometimes travel astonishing distances. And although that may sound like a grand scientific idea, in the deep sea, it feels less like a spectacle and more like a whisper carried down a long blue hallway, because the ocean holds sound differently from air, cradling it, bending it, guiding it through layers that act almost like a hidden passage. And so, in tonight's sleep story, you may imagine yourself floating inside a vast underwater cathedral, where even the faintest murmur can drift far away without ever needing to grow loud. This is part of what makes the sea such a perfect setting for a relaxing story, because it reminds us that quiet is not the absence of all things, but the gentle arrangement of them, the careful lowering of every harsh edge until only softness remains. And here, in the deep water, one of the most soothing facts of all is that the ocean's structure creates regions where sound may be trapped and carried, especially where temperature drops from the surface and pressure keeps rising below, forming a special balance that helps low sounds travel with remarkable efficiency. And rather than thinking of that as something technical, you can let it feel like a lullaby principle of the earth itself, a sign that the planet knows how to carry small things tenderly over great distances. Around us, the water remains dark, cold, and patient, and the pressure continues to build with every deeper meter. Yet, by now even that invisible weight feels less like force and more like presence, like the steady hand of the sea resting everywhere at once. And in such depths, there are no sudden shadows to fear, no sharp corners in the night, only gradients, layers, slow transitions from one form of quiet to another, while tiny drifting forms pass through the water with so little urgency that they seem to embody the art of deep sleep itself. Some creatures here hardly move more than they must, and some save their strength for long stretches of waiting, because the deep ocean rewards patience, and patience, in a gentle bedtime story, becomes its own kind of comfort, a reminder that not every moment must be filled, not every silence must be broken, not every darkness must be explained. Far above us, storms may come and go, ships may cross from one horizon to another, and daylight may turn to evening and back again. But down here, those quick surface moods are softened by distance, filtered by miles of water, until what arrives is only the faintest suggestion of that upper world. And this, too, is a sleepy science fact worth lingering with, because the deep ocean is wonderfully insulated from hurry, and in that insulation, it keeps one of Earth's rarest luxuries, a sustained and natural quiet. The water masses here may travel slowly through global circulation, taking years or even centuries to complete parts of their immense journeys. And there is something profoundly calming in imagining that such slowness still exists on our busy planet. Huge rivers within the sea moving without fuss, without headlines, without anyone needing them to speed up. Just steady, measured motion in the dark. Perhaps as you listen, you can picture the ocean not as an empty drop below the world, but as a layered library of silence, each depth holding its own texture of stillness. And here in this section, the stillness has a listening quality, a soft acoustic spaciousness, as though the sea itself were resting with one ear open to distant songs. Sometimes those distant sounds may come from whales in other layers of the ocean, their low calls traveling through water in ways that can connect far places, and even that can be folded into this nighttime story as something soothing rather than dramatic. Because what matters here is not the distance or the science alone, but the feeling that life in the ocean can remain gently in touch across darkness, like lights in distant homes seen from far across a sleeping valley. Below and around us, fine particles of marine snow continue their endless descent, pale nourishment settling through the dark like an underwater winter. And every tiny fragment reminds us that the ocean is linked from top to bottom, from bright surface to quiet abyss, by patient falling, by soft exchange, by gradual giving. And it is difficult to imagine a more restful image than that. This endless downward drift, so light and constant that it almost seems to slow time itself. Even your own thoughts, if they are still moving tonight, can join that marine snow now, sinking gently out of reach, one by one, until the mind feels clearer, dimmer, quieter, and more spacious. The farther we continue into these deep, quiet zones, the more the ocean seems to become not a place outside you, but a rhythm within you. Your breathing borrowing the sea's slowness, your heartbeat following its measured calm, your body remembering how natural it is to rest when nothing is being asked of it. And so this calming narration asks for nothing more now than your softness, your heaviness, your willingness to drift a little farther from the surface world and deeper into this relaxing story, where pressure is gentle, darkness is velvet, distance is peaceful, and every fact arrives like a cool wave smoothing the shore of the mind until even the last active thoughts begin to loosen and float away. leaving you suspended in the deep-sounding sea, held in stillness, carried in quiet, and slowly, steadily, beautifully ready to fall asleep. As this sleep story carries you farther from the bright and hurried surface, we drift now into the Bathyal depths, that broad and peaceful region of the ocean where continental slopes fall away into darkness, and where the world begins to feel not only quiet, but ancient, as though the sea has folded time into long blue layers and tucked them around itself for safekeeping. And here, in this soothing bedtime story, you may imagine the water around you as velvety and immense, cool beyond measure, softly pressing from every side, yet never harsh, never urgent, only present, only steady, like the weight of a thick blanket settling over tired shoulders at the end of a long day. The farther we descend, the more the ocean teaches one of its gentlest sleepy science facts, which is that great depth often comes with great stability. Because down here, the daily swing of sunlight means nothing. The wind cannot ruffle the water, and even temperature changes become slow and rare, so that the deep sea keeps a calmness that the upper world can only borrow in brief moments. And this makes it a perfect landscape for a relaxing story, a nighttime story where every detail arrives softened by distance, and every scientific truth feels less like a lesson and more like a lullaby. In these waters, pressure has continued its patient climb, becoming so great that any thought of ordinary air-filled fragility seems very far away, and yet life persists in forms so gentle that they almost seem made of thought and shadow, transparent creatures with floating frills, patient fish with soft bodies, drifting beings whose slow motions look less like swimming and more like surrender to a rhythm older than memory. And that is perhaps one of the most calming things the ocean can offer, the reminder that adaptation is often quiet, that endurance need not be loud, and that softness can survive in places of tremendous weight. Meanwhile, the seafloor in many places lies still farther below us, unseen but present, sloping and settling into basins and plains, and above it, great volumes of water move in slow currents that scientists trace across oceans like rivers without banks, streams of colder and denser water guided by Earth's shape and rotation, circulating not in a rush, but over years, decades, and longer, until the whole planet seems to breathe through them. If you listen inwardly while this calming narration continues, you might picture those deep currents as long exhalations, steady and nearly silent, crossing the darkness with no need for recognition. And perhaps your own breath can become like that now, a little longer, a little slower, a little smoother, because the sea at depth does not waste motion, and neither must you. Above us, far above us now, lies the restless layer of weather and daylight and clocks. But down here, the ocean keeps another schedule altogether, one written in drifting particles, gradual cooling, and the silent arrival of marine snow, still falling through the water like tiny pieces of patience, tiny messages from the upper world dissolving gently into the lower one, feeding creatures that do not chase much and do not need much, creatures that know how to wait. Some regions of the deep ocean are so far from human noise that they become almost ceremonial in their hush true quiet zones in spirit, where no harbor clatter, no breaking surf, and no daily commotion can easily intrude, and in such places, the sea seems to rest inside itself, holding only the faintest murmur of currents, perhaps the distant low call of a whale traveling far above, perhaps the subtle shifting of water masses brushing past one another in the dark. And everything is softened by scale, by depth, by the enormous courtesy of distance. That is the beauty of this gentle bedtime descent, that the deeper we go, the less the world insists, until all pressure becomes comfort, all darkness becomes privacy, and all space becomes room to soften into deep sleep. The ocean floor, though not yet beneath us in full detail, begins to feel nearer in imagination, not as a hard endpoint, but as another quiet chapter waiting below. And around us, the Bathyal realm holds its own subdued wonders, delicate corals anchored on steep slopes, slow-growing sponges filtering the water with patient persistence, and fish adapted to dimness, so complete that vision itself becomes only one small tool among many, while touch, motion, and chemistry guide life through the dark with an intimacy that feels almost dreamlike. No one hurries here, because hurrying would make little sense in a world built of slow falls, slow drifts, and slow circulations. And the mind, hearing that, can begin to loosen its own tight timing, can set down the need to finish every thought, can let one idea fade into the next, like shades of blue fading into black. So let this bedtime story continue to rock you gently. Let the science of the ocean become a soft place to rest rather than a thing to hold onto. And imagine yourself suspended in the Bathyal stillness between the distant memory of the surface and the even deeper silence below, where the sea's long invisible rivers move around you with unimaginable calm, where every creature conserves its energy like a precious candle in the night, where the dark is not empty but tenderly full, and where your own thoughts may now drift as marine snow drifts, downward and downward, until they settle somewhere quiet, leaving you lighter, sleepier, and ready to fall asleep within the serene and endless hush of the deep. Now, as this sleep story continues its calm and unbroken descent, we arrive at the edge of the abyssal world, where the great slopes begin to ease into broad plains, and the ocean opens outward into something so level, so vast, and so quiet that it feels less like a place, and more like a deep and patient thought held by the earth itself. And here, in this bedtime story of pressure, depth, and quiet zones, the seafloor is not jagged or dramatic in the way the waking mind might expect, but often remarkably gentle, with huge stretches of sediment spread smooth over time by the slow settling of tiny particles, the steady rain of marine snow, and the patient work of currents that do not rush, but only pass and pass again, as if polishing the darkness into stillness. By now, the water above us is immense in weight, and the pressure at these depths has become extraordinary, many hundreds of times greater than the pressure felt at the surface. Yet the ocean does not announce this with noise or force. It simply continues being itself. And that may be one of the most relaxing science facts of all, that such great intensity can exist inside such complete calm. immense pressure can live side by side with immense quiet, and that the deep sea carries both without strain, without display, without needing to be anything other than slow and steady. Around us, the abyssal plain stretches farther than sight could ever follow, though sight itself means very little here in the darkness. And if you imagine it now, imagine not a barren emptiness, but a resting landscape, soft with fine sediment, gently uneven in places, marked here and there by subtle ridges, low rises, and ancient deposits that have taken thousands upon thousands of years to settle, until the floor of the ocean has become one of the calmest archives on the planet, a place where time is laid down in dust-thin layers, each one adding to a silence so old and continuous that even thought begins to slow in its presence. It is a soothing thing to remember, as this relaxing story moves on, that much of the deep seafloor changes only gradually, because there is little weather here, no rain falling directly, no wind to scatter anything, only the long, patient descent of particles from above, and the occasional movement of currents that brush the sediment like fingertips, smoothing a bedspread. The creatures of the abyss live according to this same slow logic, conserving energy, moving carefully, and accepting the steady conditions of their world with a kind of natural ease. And many of them are beautifully adapted to darkness and pressure in ways that seem almost poetic, with delicate limbs for sensing the seafloor, slow metabolisms for a place where food arrives gently and irregularly, and bodies designed not for sudden action, but for persistence, for waiting, for making a life in a world where stillness is not a pause, but the normal shape of every day. See, cucumbers may drift or inch across the sediment like living thoughts. Brittle stars may rest with fragile arms spread softly over the plain, and small deep-sea fish may move with such reserve that they seem to honor the quiet around them, never disturbing more of it than necessary. In this part of the ocean, the concept of a quiet zone becomes especially meaningful, because distance alone has become a kind of shelter. Miles of water separating this place from storms, engines, shorelines, and all the quick human noise of the upper world. And although sound can travel efficiently through the sea, what reaches here often arrives softened by enormity, reduced to faintness, turned by water into something more like a memory than an interruption. And so, the abyssal plain keeps one of the deepest forms of peace available anywhere on Earth. Not perfect silence, perhaps, but a living hush, a stable acoustic darkness, in which only the gentlest signs of motion remain. If you let your breathing follow the rhythm of this nighttime story, you may find that the abyss teaches a very kind lesson, which is that not everything meaningful must be bright, fast, or close at hand, because here meaning is carried by slowness, by pressure, by the gradual settling of life into a workable harmony with its surroundings. And there is something deeply comforting in the knowledge that an environment so extreme can also be so composed. Even the cold here is steady, usually hovering just above freezing, not changing much from hour to hour, not surprising anyone, simply remaining as it has remained for so long. And that steadiness can feel like a gift to the tired mind, a reminder that peace is often found not in excitement, but in consistency, in softness, in the absence of sudden demands. Above us, unimaginably far above us now, the surface continues its ordinary dance of waves and weather, but it no longer feels urgent from here, because the abyssal world belongs to another scale entirely, one measured in millennia of settling sediment, in the slow circulation of deep water, in tiny meals drifting down from distant ecosystems. And as this calming narration carries you onward, you may allow your own thoughts to become smaller and gentler, no longer trying to rise back toward the surface of the day, but resting here instead on this broad and quiet plain where the earth itself seems to be sleeping under a blanket of cold water and dark stillness. And perhaps that is the deepest comfort of tonight's sleep story, that somewhere on this very planet there are places so calm, so patient, and so undisturbed that they make your own rest feel natural, as if deep sleep were simply another abyssal current, another soft descent, another way of becoming quiet under the vast and tender weight of the world. From the broad and peaceful abyssal plain, this sleep story now glides toward one of the ocean's most hushed and hidden landscapes, the long and gentle rim of a deep trench, where the seafloor, after resting in wide stillness, begins once more to slope and fold, not in any sudden or frightening way, but with the quiet dignity of ancient earth slowly bending beneath the sea. And here in this bedtime story, the trench is not a place of alarm, but of even deeper calm, a sheltered valley of water and stone where pressure becomes softer in feeling the more we accept it, and where darkness, already complete, seems to grow velvety and profound, like layers of midnight laid one upon another, until the mind can no longer tell where thought ends and rest begins. As we drift nearer, the ocean teaches another of its most relaxing science facts, which is that some of the deepest parts of the world are created by slow movements of the planet itself, where one part of Earth's crust gradually slips beneath another over immense spans of time. And there is something almost soothing in that slowness, in knowing that even the grandest structures below the sea are shaped not by hurry, but by patience, by pressure, by long and nearly silent change. And because this is a nighttime story meant to help you fall asleep, you need not picture sharp cliffs or violent motion, only the graceful curve of the seafloor descending into a deeper cradle of still water, a cradle that has held its form for longer than any human memory. Here the water grows heavier still, though heavy in the ocean is never quite the same as harsh, because the deep has a way of turning enormous forces into quiet companions, and the creatures that live near these depths do not fight the sea's weight so much as belong to it, their bodies shaped for compression, their chemistry adjusted to pressure, their lives arranged around the simple and beautiful truth that adaptation can be gentle. Some survive on what drifts down from above, those endless flecks of marine snow still settling through the dark, like slow underwater snowfall, while others make use of nourishment carried along the trench walls or gathered in soft sediments below. And everything here seems arranged according to patience, conservation, and calm, as though the Hadal edge of the ocean had become one of the last places on Earth where nothing at all is expected to happen quickly. The quiet zones of the deep feel especially complete here, because the trench lies so far beneath the surface world that everyday noise seems almost imaginary. And although the sea can carry sound across extraordinary distances, whatever reaches this depth arrives dimmed by remoteness, gentled by scale, turned into something faint and rounded, like hearing a memory through a wall of sleep. Even the water itself appears to move with more restraint, settling into layers and currents so measured that they seem less like flows and more like long intentions, subtle pathways of cold, dense water tracing the shape of the deep earth without haste, without insistence, while sediment gathers in hollows and on ledges with the same unbroken patience that has shaped the abyss all along. If you imagine the trench now, imagine it not as a dramatic drop, but as a great sleeping fold in the ocean floor, lined with fine silt, touched by the occasional soft-bodied creature, watched over by complete darkness and almost complete stillness. And let that image be as calming as a blanket tucked more closely around you. Because in this relaxing story, the deep ocean is not here to astonish you awake, but to guide you farther into softness, farther into the kind of spacious, inward quiet that leads to deep sleep. And there are facts here that feel made for a gentle bedtime, such as the simple wonder that life has been found in astonishingly deep waters, proving again and again that the ocean is less empty than it seems, less lonely than it looks from above, and more tenderly inhabited than the waking mind first assumes. Some animals of the deepest realm move so slowly and with such economy that their presence feels almost meditative, while others are so delicately built for pressure that bringing them quickly upward would harm them more than leaving them in their natural dark. Which reminds us that every level of the ocean has its own wisdom, its own proper softness, its own way of holding life. And perhaps you can feel something similar happening in yourself now, your thoughts settling best when left undisturbed, your body resting more deeply when not asked to rise too quickly back into the busy upper layers of the day. Above us are all the bright and crowded places of ordinary life, but down here, along the sleeping trench, there is only calm descent, faint drifting, and the great silence of the planet at rest beneath water. So let this sleep story keep carrying you, sentence by sentence, downward by the gentlest degrees, while the pressure of the ocean becomes almost like reassurance, while the trench beside you becomes a quiet valley of night, and while every remaining thought loosens from its edges and slips softly away like sediment settling through still water. Because this is a bedtime story for surrender, a calming narration for the late hour, a gentle bedtime current made of depth and darkness and patient science. And the deeper we drift into these hidden parts of the sea, the less you need to hold on to anything at all, until there is only the hush of the deep, the folded earth below, the immense sleeping water above, and the steady, peaceful feeling that it is safe now to fall asleep. Now, as this sleep story drifts beyond the gentle rim of the sleeping trench, we enter the Hadal Cradle itself, the deepest quiet of the ocean, where the seafloor folds into a narrow and hidden valley, and the water above becomes so immense, so layered, and so softly heavy that it feels less like distance and more like a tender, endless blanket drawn over the world. And here, in this bedtime story of pressure, depth, and quiet zones, everything becomes even more hushed, even more patient, even more beautifully removed from the bright and hurried concerns of the surface, so that you may imagine yourself floating not in an abyss of anything frightening, but in a sheltered place of extraordinary calm, a place so far below the waves that daytime no longer matters, weather no longer matters, and only the slow language of deep water remains. The science of this realm is astonishing, and yet tonight it arrives in the gentlest way, because one of the most relaxing facts about the deepest ocean is that even here, under pressures so immense they would crush ordinary air-filled spaces in an instant, life still finds ways to continue with quiet grace through soft bodies, flexible structures, and tiny molecular adjustments that allow cells to function in conditions beyond ordinary imagination. And there is something profoundly soothing in that, the idea that nature does not panic in the face of weight, but adapts, settles, and makes a home even in the stillest and heaviest dark. Around us, the trench floor is not loud or dramatic, but soft with sediment, gathered over long ages in a place where particles slowly settle, where slopes guide fine material downward, and where the earth itself seems to be resting under the deepest water it can hold. And because this is a relaxing story meant to help you fall asleep, you can picture the trench not as a drop, but as a cradle, a narrow, sleeping valley tucked into the planet's blue darkness, lined with velvety silt and watched over by silence so complete that even your thoughts may begin to lower their voices in response. Marine snow still reaches down here, though sparingly, and each drifting speck feels precious. Each tiny fragment a reminder that the ocean remains connected from top to bottom, from sunlight to midnight to this hidden Hadal rest. And as those particles sink, so too can the remnants of your day, one concern at a time, one unfinished thought at a time, descending gently out of sight until the mind becomes smoother, quieter, and more ready for deep sleep. In the deepest trenches, the water is cold and stable, rarely changing, and that steadiness gives this realm its own kind of peace, because nothing here is sudden, nothing startles, nothing flashes unexpectedly into being, and even movement feels thoughtful, reduced to the smallest useful gestures, the tiniest glides, the faintest shifts along the sediment, as if every creature understands that the deep ocean rewards calm and has all the time in the world to offer it. Some animals here feed on the organic material that arrives from above, while others graze or sift through the fine deposits below, living on what the trench quietly gathers, and their patience feels almost ceremonial. A lesson in how life can continue without hurry, without waste, without noise. The quiet zones of the Hadal world are perhaps the deepest quiet zones of all, because so much water lies between this hidden place and the restless surface that ordinary sound becomes remote and softened. And although the ocean carries low sounds across great distances, what remains in the trench feels subdued by scale, rounded by the water, diffused into faintness, so that the whole realm seems wrapped in acoustic velvet, a silence not empty, but held, not vacant, but deeply full of stillness. And if your own breathing has grown slower now, that is only natural, because the sea at this depth invites slowness, invites release, invites the body to remember that rest is not something it must earn, but something it can simply enter, the way a sinking particle enters still water, or a dim thought enters a dream. Perhaps this is why the deepest ocean can feel so comforting in a nighttime story, because it strips away almost everything except essentials: pressure, darkness, cold, distance, and the soft persistence of life. And together these do not create loneliness, but a strange and beautiful intimacy, as if the world in its most hidden places were whispering that there is no need to keep striving now, no need to hold yourself up against the whole day, because even the planet's deepest valley survives by yielding to what surrounds it, by being held within a greater weight, by letting the sea press close from every side. And so, as this calming narration continues, you may imagine your thoughts resting along the quiet floor of the trench, like soft sediment settling at last, no longer stirred by surface winds, no longer tugged this way and that by unfinished motion, only resting, only dimming, only becoming part of a deeper stillness. We will not hurry through this Hadal cradle, because hurrying would not belong here, and instead we simply drift, suspended above the folded earth, listening to the almost silence of the deepest water, feeling the vast ocean above like layers of midnight stacked one over another, and letting every sleepy science fact become a kind of lullaby. Every truth about pressure, a form of holding; every truth about depth, a form of distance from the day; every truth about quiet zones, a permission to soften further, until this gentle bedtime story is no longer something you are following word by word, but something you are floating inside, a relaxing story that has become part trench, part tide, part dream, carrying you so softly through the sleeping sea that you may at any moment drift the rest of the way into deep sleep, and never notice the exact instant when listening turns to dreaming and dreaming turns to rest. This chapter continues the same long-form, ultra-calming, sleepy science storytelling style, anchored to your attached sample script. Here in the deepest part of our gentle bedtime story, we remain within the Hadal Trench, drifting just above the patient floor of the hidden blue valley, where the ocean feels less like a place and more like a great, quiet condition of being, a soft and endless stillness shaped by pressure, depth, and time. And as this sleep story moves onward, you may imagine that nothing at all is rushing now, because down here rushing would make no sense. The sea has long since set aside the habits of the surface world, and in their place it offers a slower rhythm, one made of soft sediment, cold water, immense weight, and the kind of darkness that does not conceal but comforts, like a room with the lights lowered so completely that the mind no longer tries to look outward and instead begins, very naturally, to settle inward. The trench floor beneath us is gently layered with fine material that has taken ages to arrive, tiny particles drifting down from higher waters, tiny fragments of life and mineral and memory, all settling so gradually that the ocean bottom becomes a kind of resting place for time itself. And there is something deeply soothing in that thought that the deepest valleys of the earth are shaped not only by tectonic movement and the folding of the crust, but also by the soft accumulation of almost invisible things, by patience made physical, by stillness becoming landscape. The pressure here is beyond ordinary experience. Yet, in this relaxing story, it feels less like force and more like an embrace, because the sea at great depth does not shove or strike or clamor. It simply surrounds completely and continuously, and the creatures who live in this hidden zone have adapted to that constancy in quiet ways. Their tissues, their chemistry, their forms all adjusted to a world where the water presses from every side and nothing in them needs to resist it dramatically. And perhaps that is one of the gentlest sleepy science facts of all, that in some of the most extreme conditions on Earth, life has answered not with hardness, but with exquisite accommodation, with subtle balance, with a softness strong enough to endure. Around us, the trench walls rise in darkness, not sharp in our imagination, but smooth with shadow, like the folds of a great underwater curtain. And far above them, far above everything now, lies the distant surface, carrying moonlight, weather, waves, and the waking concerns of another world entirely. But those concerns cannot easily reach us here, because this is one of the ocean's deepest quiet zones, a place so far removed from wind and daylight that even sound seems to arrive softened, rounded by distance, hushed by water. And in that hush, there is room for your own thoughts to lower their voices too, to become gentler, fewer, slower, until they drift apart like fine grains settling through dark water. Sometimes the deep sea is imagined only in terms of its remoteness. But tonight, in this gentle bedtime, it can be imagined as closeness of another kind. Closeness to the planet's oldest rhythms, to the long circulation of cold water, to the patient falling of marine snow, to the steady chemistry of life carried on in darkness without complaint. And that kind of closeness can feel very comforting when you are ready to fall asleep, because it asks nothing of you except that you rest inside it for a while, that you float in its calm logic, where everything important happens slowly and nothing essential needs to be finished before morning. Here on the Hadal floor, even food arrives quietly, gathered by gravity and time. And the animals that make a home in these depths often live by conserving energy, by moving carefully, by treating every motion as meaningful. And there is a lesson in that for a tired mind, because this nighttime story is not asking you to chase anything, to solve anything, or to keep every thought alive, but only to notice how the ocean releases all unnecessary effort the deeper it goes, and to let your own body do the same, letting the forehead smooth, the shoulders sink, the breath lengthen, the hands unclench, the day loosen and slip away. If you wish, you can imagine the trench floor as a kind of underwater cradle, not because it is small, but because it holds things so quietly. And as we drift over it, the scientific wonders of pressure and depth turn almost into lullaby material, every fact becoming softer in the telling, every detail of the sea taking on the texture of a blanket, every sentence moving like a current that neither hurries nor stops. And this is how a calming narration becomes something more than words. It becomes a rhythm the body trusts, a gentle bedtime current that carries you farther from the surface of thought and closer to deep sleep. The cold remains steady here, never startling, and the darkness remains complete, never demanding, and the silence remains full rather than empty, the silence of a place that has been itself for a very long time and sees no reason to become anything else. And perhaps that is why the deepest ocean can feel so reassuring in a sleep story, because it is utterly free from performance, utterly free from hurry, utterly free from the bright insistence of the day. And so you may rest here with it now, above the soft sediment, below the distant world, surrounded by pressure that behaves like holding, wrapped in depth that behaves like distance from care, and guided by the sea's most peaceful truth, that the farther you drift into stillness, the less there is to do, until this relaxing story becomes quieter and quieter inside you, until listening itself softens into dreaming, and dreaming softens into that final gentle surrender where the mind no longer needs a map, and the body, like the ocean floor beneath us, simply rests, following the same soft, long-form sleep story rhythm established for your attached sample structure. We continue our descent in one unbroken, calming flow, here in the deepest hush of the hidden trench. This bedtime story moves more slowly than ever, as though even time itself has grown heavy and gentle in the great still water. And you may imagine now that you are no longer traveling in any ordinary sense, but simply resting within the ocean's deepest quiet, suspended above the Hadal floor, where pressure, darkness, and distance have softened the world into something almost dreamlike, something beyond urgency, beyond brightness, beyond the quick little movements of daytime thought. And in this sleep story, the sea is not dramatic, not wild, not sharp with danger, but patient and enveloping, a place where the vast water above you seems to press not with force, but with tenderness, like many soft blankets layered one over another, until the body beneath them can do nothing but settle. And perhaps that is one of the loveliest facts hidden inside the deep ocean, that the greatest weight on earth can feel in imagination, like the greatest invitation to let go. Beneath us, the trench floor lies smooth in long stretches, gathered from ages of falling particles, soft sediment settling grain by grain, until the bottom of the sea becomes a resting place for countless tiny arrivals. And there is such comfort in that image, in knowing that the deepest places are shaped not only by immense geologic forces, but also by the smallest, quietest acts of descent, each delicate fragment drifting downward through darkness until it finds a place to land. And as this relaxing story continues, your own thoughts can do the same, each one lowering softly out of awareness, each one settling into the calm silt of sleep, until the mind itself feels like a peaceful seabed where nothing needs to move quickly anymore. The water all around us is cold in the ancient, stable way of the deep sea, never startling, never changing suddenly, simply remaining itself hour after hour, year after year. And that steadiness can feel wonderfully soothing tonight, because the tired mind so often longs for something that does not flash or buzz or interrupt. Something that asks for no response. Something content to remain quiet. And here, in this hidden blue valley, the ocean offers exactly that, a realm where darkness is complete, yet never cruel, where stillness is full rather than empty, and where life continues in forms so measured and patient that it seems to have learned a kind of underwater meditation somewhere in the surrounding black water. Tiny creatures drift or rest or move only when needed, conserving their energy with exquisite care. And there is deep comfort in their economy, in the way they embody a truth that this gentle bedtime story wants to offer you as well. That not every part of you must stay awake. Not every thought must finish its circle. Not every worry deserves more motion, because the sea at this depth survives by doing less, by yielding to pressure, by trusting stillness. And you may do the same now, letting your breathing become slow, and even letting your jaw soften, your shoulders sink, your chest loosen until your whole body begins to mirror the quiet logic of the deep. The trench walls rise beside us like dark folds in sleeping fabric, and though they are immense, they do not feel imposing here, only sheltering, like the sides of a cradle shaped by the earth over unimaginable time. And that cradle-like feeling grows stronger the longer we remain, because the Hadal world is a place of enclosure without confinement, of depth without threat, of darkness without loneliness. And perhaps that is why it makes such a perfect nighttime story setting, because it removes the glare of the upper world and leaves only what can soothe: cold hush, distance, softness, and the faint, continuous sense of being held far above. The ocean surface still carries moonlight, winds, currents, and all the changing weather of the ordinary world. But from here, those things seem impossibly remote, softened by so much water that they have become almost abstract. And as the day recedes farther from you, the deeper ocean becomes easier to trust, easier to rest inside, until even the idea of returning upward feels unnecessary for now, because this is the part of the sleep story where nothing needs to happen except deepening calm, where each sentence arrives like a gentle current passing through still water, and each quiet scientific truth about pressure and depth becomes another reason to release whatever remains of wakefulness. If you picture the water above you now, picture not an emptiness, but a great blue-black ceiling made of layered silence, a vast sleeping roof under which the world itself seems to have gone quiet. And if you picture the floor below you, picture a soft plain of gathered time, fine sediments lying still in the complete dark, receiving each tiny falling particle without resistance, without complaint, simply making room. And this, too, is a sleepy science fact of its own kind, that the deepest ocean is a place that receives, that holds, that lets things settle. And perhaps tonight you may allow your own mind to become like that Hadal floor, receptive and quiet, no longer chasing thought after thought, but simply letting each one sink, dim, and disappear. So we remain here a while longer in the longest hush of the hidden trench, floating low above the sleeping earth, surrounded by pressure that feels like reassurance, by darkness that feels like privacy, and by quiet so complete it seems to slow even the passage of time. And as this calming narration softens further, it asks nothing from you now except surrender, the gentle surrender of a listener becoming drowsier with every word, of a body remembering how natural it is to rest, of a mind growing heavier and softer, until this relaxing story is no longer something you are following, but something you are drifting inside, deeper and slower and quieter, until at last you may simply fall asleep, continuing the same calm structure and tone shaped around your attached sample. This chapter remains a single flowing paragraph with a separate continuity log below, here in the deepest quiet of our sleep story, where the hidden trench has already welcomed us into its patient darkness. We drift not downward now, but gently forward, as if following a current so soft it can barely be called movement at all. And that may be one of the most soothing truths about the deep ocean, that sometimes the most meaningful motion is almost invisible, a slow rearranging of water, a subtle leaning of the sea through itself, a careful passage through pressure and silence that asks for no effort from the traveler. And so this bedtime story becomes even calmer here, because there is no rush to arrive anywhere, no bright destination waiting ahead, only the continued pleasure of floating through a world where depth has quieted everything into tenderness. Above us, the immense ocean still rises in layer after layer of dark water, each one resting upon the next. And below us, the Hadal floor remains soft with gathered sediment, fine particles that have spent long journeys falling through the water column before coming to rest in this sheltered place. And if you imagine those grains now, arriving one by one over years and centuries, you may feel how naturally the mind begins to imitate them, letting each thought descend more slowly, letting each concern settle more softly, until what once seemed active and restless becomes as quiet as silt on the sleeping floor of the sea. The pressure here remains vast beyond ordinary daily understanding. Yet, in this relaxing story, it never becomes harsh, because the ocean at great depth does not behave like a sudden hand, but like constant company, a steady presence surrounding every side at once. And the creatures who belong to these depths have long since adapted to that companionship, living through small adjustments of chemistry, through flexible tissues, through the gentle intelligence of evolution, learning what kind of body can rest in a world of enormous weight. And this sleepy science fact feels almost like a lullaby in itself, the reminder that life can answer heaviness not only with strength, but with softness, balance, and ease. Somewhere in the darkness nearby, tiny scavengers may be moving over the sediment with patient purpose, and farther off, nearly hidden in the dark, small animals may be waiting for what drifts down from above, because in the deepest ocean, food often arrives quietly, carried by gravity, by current, by time. And that slow arrival shapes a slow life, a life in which energy is used carefully, and motion is rarely wasted. And perhaps that is why this nighttime story feels so restful now, because everything in the Hadal world seems to understand how to conserve, how to pause, how to do only what is needed, and then return to stillness. The trench walls that rise beside us no longer feel like boundaries, but like shelter, dark folds of the earth holding this soft valley in place. And between those shadowed slopes, the water seems especially hushed, as though the shape of the seafloor itself were helping to preserve the calm, keeping the hidden blue valley wrapped in a kind of underwater privacy. One of the most secluded, quiet zones on the planet, where the noise of weather, shipping, and shorelines is so distant that it loses all sharpness and becomes only a faint memory of another world. And when you listen to this calming narration, perhaps you can feel the same thing happening inside you, the upper noise of the day receding, the sharper edges of thought growing rounder, dimmer, less important, until your awareness is resting mostly in breath, in warmth, in heaviness, and in the gentle rhythm of the words. It is comforting, too, to remember that the deep sea is not empty simply because it is dark. For darkness in the ocean is often full of hidden order, hidden adaptation, hidden patience, and here in the trench, even the cold participates in that order, remaining steady and ancient, rarely changing, never startling, simply holding its quiet temperature as though guarding the peace of the place. And such steadiness can be deeply reassuring for a tired mind, because so much of waking life asks us to react, adjust, answer, and hurry, while the deep ocean offers the opposite invitation, asking nothing, changing little, and allowing rest to unfold at its own natural pace. If this sleep story has become slower in your body than in your ears, that is perfectly fine, because it was always meant to be that way. A gentle bedtime current rather than a path to follow closely, a relaxing story shaped not by plot, but by atmosphere, by the soft science of pressure and depth and stillness, by the old cold of the sea and the silence of a place where almost everything extraneous has been left behind. And now, as we continue through this hidden valley, the ocean seems to whisper the same message again and again in its own quiet language, that there is nothing more to solve tonight, nothing more to carry, nothing more to hold above the surface of thought. So let the trench keep its longest secrets for a while longer. Let the water above remain vast and dark and wonderfully uninterested in haste. Let the floor below continue receiving each settling grain, and let your own mind become more like this Hadal world, deeper, quieter, less disturbed by passing things, until even the sound of the story begins to feel far away, as though it too were drifting through water, softened by distance, slowed by calm, and gradually dissolving into the same peaceful darkness that fills the sea, where every fact becomes gentle, every image becomes dim, and every last waking thought is free at last to sink, settle, and fall asleep. And so this sleep story continues, still low within the Hadal trench, where the water is darker than midnight, and yet softer than any darkness the waking mind ever imagines. Because here the sea has no sharp edges, no sudden brightness, no need to announce itself, only a deep and folded silence that seems to cradle every drifting thought until it grows quiet enough to disappear. And as this bedtime story moves onward, you may picture yourself gliding through the hidden valley with almost no motion at all, as though the ocean itself were carrying you in its sleep. And this is one of the gentlest truths about the deepest water, that even in places of enormous pressure, the world can remain profoundly calm, with no drama in the weight, no violence in the depth, only a constant and patient holding that surrounds everything equally. Above you rises a vast column of water layered in darkness, so tall and so complete that the surface now feels less like a destination and more like a distant idea, while below you the trench floor lies smooth with gathered sediment, fine silts, and tiny remains that have taken so long to settle that time itself seems to have fallen asleep among them. And there is something deeply relaxing in that image, this soft seafloor shaped partly by the slow movements of the earth and partly by the endless descent of the smallest things, because it reminds the tired mind that not everything important arrives with force. Some things arrive grain by grain, breath by breath, until change becomes indistinguishable from peace. Here in the deepest quiet zones, life persists in ways so delicate that they almost seem made for a nighttime story, with tiny creatures and pressure-loving microbes inhabiting the sediments and water, continuing their hidden work in darkness that never lifts. And even that science feels soothing tonight, because the Hadal world is not empty at all, only subtle, its forms of life adjusted to pressure through softness, chemistry, and patience. And perhaps that is why it feels so restful to linger here, because the deepest ocean answers heaviness not by fighting it, but by adapting to it so completely that what once sounded extreme becomes simply home. The water remains cold and stable, not icy in a biting way, but gently, steadily chilled, the kind of ancient cold that does not surprise anyone. And in that steadiness, there is a lesson for the body listening now, a quiet reminder that deep sleep is often less about escaping and more about settling into something unchanging enough to trust. As we drift a little farther along the floor of the trench, the walls to either side rise like darkened folds of velvet, sheltering rather than enclosing. And between them, the sea feels even more private, as though the shape of the earth itself were helping keep this place asleep, preserving a softness of sound so complete that any distant murmur becomes rounded and faint before it reaches us. And this too can soothe the mind, the knowledge that the ocean does not need total silence to create peace, only distance, depth, and enough darkness for every sound to forget how sharp it once was. Even the currents here, when they move, do so with exquisite restraint, tracing the trench in slow passages, shifting water and sediment so gently that nothing feels disturbed. And your own thoughts may begin to imitate that restraint now, moving less, circling less, no longer insisting on being finished, but simply flowing, fading, and smoothing themselves out in the dark. This relaxing story was always meant to carry you into that softer state, where a fact about ocean pressure becomes a feeling of comfort, where a fact about depth becomes distance from the busy day, where a fact about quiet zones becomes permission to stop answering the world for a while. And here, in the folded silence of the trench, those meanings become almost effortless, because the Hadal Sea is already doing the work of calming, already offering the body an example of how to rest under great weight without strain, how to remain still without emptiness, how to live quietly inside a place that never asks for speed. Perhaps you can feel that now in your breathing, slower than before, longer at the edges, easier to release, as if each exhale were another tiny sinking particle joining the soft floor below. Somewhere in the sediment beneath us, unseen life continues at its own measured pace, drawing energy from what little arrives, transforming the faint offerings of the upper world into another layer of hidden continuity. And that continuity is comforting too, because it means the ocean is one connected story from surface to trench, from sunlit wave to sleeping valley, with every level passing something downward. And tonight, this gentle bedtime journey does the same, passing calm from one sentence to the next, from one breath to the next, until your body no longer feels like it is listening so much as floating, suspended in dark water that asks nothing and gives back only stillness. We do not need to leave this place yet. And in truth, there is nowhere else we need to be, because the deepest part of the sea has a way of turning movement into rest and distance into safety. And as this sleep story keeps drifting through the hidden valley, the trench floor below you remains smooth and patient. The water above remains vast and softly heavy. The walls beside you remain sheltering and dim, and all the little unfinished thoughts that followed you into the night may now settle one by one like marine snow in the dark, disappearing into the folded silence where even echoes rest, until this bedtime story becomes a whisper, then a murmur, then only a feeling of being held beneath layers of quiet. And finally, when you are ready, nothing more than the gentle permission to fall asleep, using the attached sample as the tonal reference. This chapter continues in the same gentle, serialized sleep story format, here in the hidden hush of the Hadal Trench, where this sleep story has grown slower and softer with every passing chapter. We drift onward through water so calm that even the idea of movement begins to blur into rest, and you may imagine yourself floating through a corridor of complete night, not a harsh or empty night, but a velvety one, deep and folded and kind, where the ocean holds every sound at a distance, and every thought with a softer hand than the world above ever could. And as this bedtime story continues, the darkness around you feels almost tender, as though the sea itself were dimming the last lights of the day one by one, until nothing remains but quiet depth, gentle pressure, and the long, slow rhythm of water resting upon water. Above you, far beyond sight and far beyond concern, lies the distant surface with its winds, its moonlit waves, its passing weather, and all the bright and hurried things that once seemed important. But down here, those surface motions have become only memory, softened by mile upon mile of water, reduced to almost nothing by distance. And in their place, the trench offers something much more soothing, a world where pressure is constant, temperature is steady, and silence is full, not empty. A silence with texture, with patience, with the soft companionship of hidden life continuing in the dark. Beneath you, the floor of the trench waits in its long composure, smooth with sediment, fine as dust, gathered through ages of falling particles. And tonight that soft, descending matter may feel like one of the ocean's gentlest lullabies, because every tiny fragment that settles below has taken a quiet journey downward, drifting from brighter waters into deeper ones, passing through twilight and midnight, and into this folded valley of sleep. And perhaps your own thoughts may do the same now, each one a small grain of brightness, slowly sinking out of the mind's upper waters, losing its urgency as it falls until it reaches the still floor below and rests there without needing to rise again. Around us, the trench walls remain dim and sheltering, less like cliffs than like folds in dark fabric, holding this quiet path in place, and the water between them seems wrapped in privacy, preserved from hurry, as though the earth had made one final hidden room for rest and placed it at the bottom of the sea, where nothing arrives quickly and almost nothing asks to be disturbed. Even the creatures that belong to this depth seem to understand the wisdom of such a place, moving rarely, conserving what they need, living by patience and adaptation. And their presence, though mostly unseen, makes the trench feel not lonely, but gently inhabited, softly accompanied by forms of life so calm and so well suited to their world that simply imagining them can slow the heartbeat and ease the mind. This relaxing story was always meant to become quieter as it traveled deeper. And here, at this stage of the journey, it almost feels as though the sea is doing most of the storytelling on its own, through the idea of its pressure, through the hush of its depth, through the endless softness of marine snow descending from the upper ocean like silver dust through darkness. And that image may be one of the most soothing of all, that the ocean is never truly still, because something is always settling, always arriving, always drifting gently down. Yet the motion is so slow and fine that it does not disturb the peace. It becomes the peace, a constant and delicate reminder that the deepest places receive without effort and hold without complaint. If your breathing has become slower now, let it stay slow. And if your thoughts have become farther apart, let them drift farther. Because this nighttime story is not asking you to stay alert or gather ideas, only to float through them lightly until they begin to fade. And perhaps the Hadal Trench can help with that, with its ancient cold, its stable darkness, its complete indifference to hurry, because there is something deeply calming about a place that does not demand performance, a place that does not need to be brighter, louder, or faster in order to matter, a place content to remain quietly itself under the immense sleeping weight of the world. Somewhere in the dark water above, far beyond our view, the ocean's larger layers still connect this hidden valley to the rest of the planet. And that too can be comforting, that even the deepest trench is part of one continuous sea, one long body of water linking surface light to abyssal hush, carrying particles, currents, chemistry, and time from one realm to another without ever breaking the whole. And in much the same way, this gentle bedtime journey has carried you from waking thought into deeper rest, sentence by sentence, breath by breath, without needing any sudden change at all, only gradual dimming, gradual softening, gradual release. So now we continue through the sleeping deep, while the silver dust of the ocean keeps falling around us, almost too slowly to notice, and the trench floor keeps receiving it with complete patience, and the water keeps pressing close with its vast, steady reassurance, and the dark keeps all things private and quiet until the body listening to this sleep story may begin to feel less like a listener and more like another small drifting thing in the sea, unhurried, untroubled, gently carried downward through layers of calm. And if there are any thoughts still flickering at the edges of your mind, they too may settle now, quietly and one by one, into the soft, hidden valley below, where everything grows dimmer, slower, farther away, and where at last the deep ocean offers the simplest gift it has been offering all along, the kind permission to become still, to become heavy, and to fall asleep. This chapter continues the same soothing serialized format, aligned with your attached sample structure, here in the hidden hush of the Hadal Trench, where our sleep story has already drifted so far from the bright restlessness of the surface world. The water seems quieter than quiet itself, as though the whole ocean has lowered its voice in order to protect your rest. And now, in these last blue hours before thought fully dissolves, we continue forward in the gentlest possible way, not rising, not sinking very much, only gliding through the deep with such softness that movement feels almost imaginary. And that is one of the most calming truths the ocean offers in a bedtime story like this, that immense places do not always need immense motion, and enormous depths do not always need drama, because sometimes the deepest parts of the planet are also the stillest, and sometimes the heaviest pressure can feel in the language of a relaxing story, like the most complete kind of holding above us, so far away now that it hardly feels real. The sea still reaches upward through layer after layer of dark water toward the moonlit skin of the world. But down here, the distance is so great that the surface has become only a soft idea, a memory of waves, a forgotten ceiling of light, while beside us the trench walls continue in long shadowed folds, curved and sheltering like dark velvet curtains drawn around a sleeping room. And below us, the seafloor remains smooth with patient sediment, the fine soft dust of ages laid down grain by grain, until the bottom of the ocean feels less like stone and more like rest made visible. As this nighttime story carries you onward, you may imagine those drifting grains still arriving from far above, each tiny fragment traveling slowly through twilight, through midnight, through the deeper and deeper waters, until at last it joins the quiet floor of the trench. And perhaps your own thoughts can follow that same path now, each one sinking a little lower, becoming less bright, less urgent, less separate from the darkness around it, until even the thoughts that once felt lively begin to settle like marine snow, almost weightless as they fall, almost soundless when they land, and the mind becomes as smooth and undisturbed as the sleeping deep itself. The pressure here is immense, yet it remains beautifully constant. And because it is constant, it feels almost reassuring in this gentle bedtime journey, a reminder that not all strong things are loud, not Not all powerful things arrive suddenly, and not all forms of weight are burdensome. For the ocean at this depth does not strike or demand. It simply surrounds, fully and evenly, asking for nothing and holding everything, and within that vast surrounding life has found its own soft ways to continue, through delicate chemistry, through patient adaptation, through bodies made not for haste, but for persistence. And that, too, is a lovely fact to carry into deep sleep. The knowledge that quiet forms of endurance exist all around the natural world, hidden and graceful, far below the reach of noise. Somewhere in the dark around us, unseen creatures may be moving with such care that their presence is felt more as possibility than motion. And that hidden life gives the trench a kind of companionship, a sense that the deepest ocean is not empty, only subtle, not lonely, only reserved. And perhaps this is why the Hadal world suits a sleep story so well, because it replaces the busy insistence of daytime with something more spacious and forgiving. A place where nothing needs to perform, nothing needs to hurry, and nothing is made sharper than it needs to be. Even sound, when it comes this far, seems to lose its edges in the water, becoming rounder, dimmer, softer, until the whole trench feels wrapped in acoustic dusk. A quiet zone so complete that the body listening may begin to copy it, letting the shoulders release, the hands rest open, the breath lengthen, and the heartbeat settle into the slow rhythm of the sea. If there is any effort left in you tonight, you do not need to carry it much farther, because this calming narration has brought you to a place where the ocean itself demonstrates how to let things rest, how to let them sink, how to let them remain unresolved without distress. And all around us, that lesson continues in the most peaceful ways, in the still cold that does not change, in the sediment that does not rush, in the trench walls that simply hold their silence, in the dark water above that bears its own weight without complaint, and in the floor below that receives every falling particle without ever needing to answer it. This relaxing story, like the sea beneath us, no longer needs to lead anywhere dramatic, because by now the deep has done its work. It has placed distance between you and the day. It has dimmed the lights of thought, and it has wrapped the mind in so much spacious quiet that even wakefulness begins to feel unnecessary. And so, we continue only a little farther through the last blue hours of the sleeping trench, while the water remains soft and heavy around us, while the silver drift keeps settling through the dark, and while every remaining thought becomes slower, softer, and farther apart, until listening itself begins to fade like a distant current, and the whole hidden valley of the ocean seems to breathe one long, calm breath around you, inviting you at last to stop following the words, to stop holding the shape of the story, and simply fall asleep. This continuation follows the same calm serialized format, with your attached sample script still available in the thread here in the sleeping trench, where this sleep story has grown softer and slower with every chapter. We begin to notice something almost too delicate to name, a gentle turning in the water, not a current strong enough to disturb the hush, but a subtle shift, a quiet deep tide moving through the hidden valley with such patience that it feels less like motion and more like a long exhale from the earth itself. And as this bedtime story carries you forward through that almost motion, you may imagine the dark water around you growing even more velvety, even more protective, as though the sea were tucking itself more closely around this secret place in preparation for the deepest part of the night. Above you, the enormous water column still stretches upward through layer upon layer of darkness, but it no longer feels heavy in any troubling sense. Only steady, only complete, only present. And that may be one of the ocean's most calming truths. That pressure in the deep sea does not arrive all at once like a sudden burden, but exists as a constant, an unbroken surrounding, so that in this relaxing story, it becomes a kind of reassurance, a reminder that being fully held by the world can sometimes feel softer than standing alone against it. Below you, the trench floor remains smooth with fine sediment, soft as dust, shaped by the patient settling of tiny particles through the upper waters over spans of time so long that the mind can stop trying to measure them and instead simply rest inside the idea of such gentleness, grain after grain descending through twilight, through midnight, through the abyss, until at last it comes to stillness in this hidden blue cradle. And if any thoughts remain wakeful tonight, they may follow that same quiet path now, lowering through the dark in their own time, dimming as they go, becoming lighter and less urgent, until they too settle on the peaceful floor of the mind and need no more attention. Around us, the trench walls rise in shadowed folds, and though they are vast, they do not feel severe, only sheltering, like the drawn curtains of a sleeping room. And within that enclosed quiet, the Hadal world seems to preserve its own secret rhythm, where nothing shines too brightly, nothing moves too quickly, and even sound, when it reaches this far, seems to lose the memory of sharpness and become round, distant, and kind. Perhaps this is why the deepest ocean can feel so suited to a nighttime story, because it teaches that silence is not empty when it is full of patience, and darkness is not lonely when it is full of rest. Somewhere in the unseen water nearby, life continues in careful and hidden ways, soft-bodied creatures moving only when they need to, tiny organisms living within the sediment, all of them adapted to a world of pressure, cold, and stillness. And there is something immensely soothing in that quiet persistence, because it suggests that peace is not the absence of life, but one of its forms, one of its oldest and most elegant forms, carried on in places the sun has never touched. The water here is cold in the ancient, stable manner of the deep ocean, never startling, never hurried into change. And that stability has its own bedtime comfort, because the body listening to this calming narration often longs for exactly that, a world that is not asking it to adjust every moment, a room that does not flash or ring or insist, a place where the next moment will feel much like this one, and the one after that softer still. And here in the trench, the sea offers such steadiness in every direction. Cold that remains cold, darkness that remains dark, silence that remains gentle, pressure that remains even, until your breathing may begin to imitate that constancy, lengthening and smoothing without effort. The gentle turning of the deep tide continues around us, almost invisible, yet somehow perceptible, as if the hidden valley itself were breathing in long underwater sleep. And as it turns, it seems to gather the last little fragments of waking thought and carry them away without hurry, not sweeping them off, not tearing them loose, only drawing them gently onward until they dissolve into the same wide hush that surrounds everything here. And this is where the sleep story becomes especially soft, because there is no need for new effort now, no need to hold the images tightly, no need even to follow every word, since the ocean has already done what it came to do, placing distance between you and the bright surface of the day, wrapping you in depth, cooling the edges of your thoughts, and guiding you into one of the quiet zones of the mind. So we remain for a little while longer in this deepest cradle, hovering low above the soft sediment, while the trench walls keep their dark and folded watch, while the immense water above presses close with its quiet reassurance, and while the deep tide turns so slowly that it seems to be made of sleep itself. And if you feel yourself growing heavier now, that is only natural, because this gentle bedtime journey has become a place of rest rather than travel, a relaxing story where every fact about pressure, depth, and silence has softened into atmosphere, into lullaby, into the simple and ancient permission to release the day completely, to drift lower into yourself, and at last, without effort and without needing to notice the exact moment, to fall asleep. As this sleep story continues through the deepest hours of the hidden trench, the gentle turning of the water becomes quieter still, until even that subtle motion seems to fold back into stillness, and you may imagine now that the ocean is no longer carrying you forward so much as holding you in place, suspended in a cradle of dark water, where pressure, depth, and silence have become so familiar, so steady, and so kind that they no longer feel like conditions at all, but like the natural shape of rest itself. And here, in this bedtime story, there is nothing left to chase, nothing left to understand too sharply, only the soft experience of being surrounded on every side by a world that has chosen calm over commotion and patience over speed. Above you, the great column of ocean still rises beyond sight, layer upon layer of sleeping water stacked into the unreachable dark. And yet, it does not feel distant in a lonely way, only comforting in its vastness, as if the whole sea were lying down with you, drawing its immense quiet over this hidden valley, the way night draws shadows across a peaceful room, while below you, the trench floor remains smooth and tender, with ages of settled sediment, fine grains resting where they fell after their long descent through twilight waters, midnight waters, abyssal waters, and finally into this sheltered place where almost everything has come to rest. In this deepest quiet zone, the sea seems to demonstrate one of its most soothing truths, that even enormous things can be gentle when they are steady, and even powerful forces can become calming when they ask nothing from you, because the pressure here is vast but unchanging. The cold is ancient but not severe. The darkness is complete but not empty, and together they create a kind of underwater sanctuary where the body listening may begin to trust its own heaviness, may begin to understand that letting go is not a failure, but a form of belonging, much like the creatures of the deep belong to this hidden world not by resisting it, but by adapting to it so quietly that the ocean and their small lives seem to breathe in the same rhythm. Somewhere in the soft sediments below, tiny forms of life continue patiently, almost invisibly, while somewhere in the surrounding dark, delicate creatures drift or rest or move only when they must, and their restraint feels like wisdom tonight, because they do not waste the quiet. They do not hurry through the stillness. They do not break the calm simply to prove they are there. And perhaps your thoughts can become like that now, no longer needing to announce themselves, no longer needing to finish every sentence they began earlier in the day, but simply existing for a moment, and then dissolving like faint traces in dark water until the mind itself begins to resemble the trench, deep, private, folded, and beautifully undisturbed. The walls of the valley beside you remain as they have been for so long, dark and sheltering, and softly curved, like velvet drawn around a bed at the end of a long evening. And in their presence, the Hadal world feels especially enclosed in peace, protected from the upper layers of weather and light and human motion, protected even from harsh sound, so that whatever reaches this far through the sea arrives dimmed and rounded and remote. And this makes the hidden valley feel less like a place at the bottom of the world, and more like a room beneath thought itself, a room where echoes fade before they fully form, where worries lose their outlines, where memory softens at the edges and becomes only warmth, only distance, only the sense that the day is no longer close enough to touch you. If you listen inwardly now, you may notice that the rhythm of this relaxing story has become almost tidal, not in any lively surface way, but in the slow and secret way of the deep ocean, where movement can be measured in gradual shifts, in patient turning, in the almost unnoticeable balancing of water against water. And perhaps your own breathing has joined that rhythm already, lengthening without effort, lowering without command, becoming deeper and softer, as though your body remembers something old and natural about rest, something the sea has been demonstrating all along, that true calm is rarely dramatic. True calm is consistent, and true calm does not need to shine brightly to be real. So we remain here a little longer, low within the sleeping trench, while the water returns softly to itself, while the seafloor receives each invisible settling grain, while the immense dark above presses close with a tenderness that no longer feels like weight, and while every last waking thought becomes looser and quieter, slipping downward through the mind, the way marine snow slips through the ocean, never hurried, never resisted, simply descending until it joins the stillness below. And because this is a gentle bedtime story, a nighttime story shaped to help you fall asleep, there is no need now for anything new, no need for brightness, no need for surprise, only the continued deepening of what is already here, the soft pressure of the sea, the folded silence of the trench, the ancient cold that never startles, the hidden life that never clamors, the quiet zones of the ocean becoming quiet zones in your own thoughts, until the whole deep world seems to settle around you like a final blanket, and the story itself grows dimmer, slower, farther away, not ending so much as fading into the same peaceful darkness that holds the trench, the same darkness that now holds you gently, completely, and without asking for anything at all, except that, whenever you are ready, you let yourself drift the rest of the way into deep sleep, here in the slow and tender continuation of our sleep story. The hidden trench seems to widen just enough for the darkness to feel even softer, as though the sea has made a small and peaceful shelf beneath the world where thoughts can come to rest. And you may imagine yourself hovering there now, not traveling anywhere urgent, not searching for anything, only suspended in a stillness so complete that even the idea of motion becomes sleepy and remote. And this is one of the deepest comforts of the ocean, that at great depth there is so little need for hurry, so little appetite for disturbance, so much room for a tired mind to become quiet without effort, because the water all around you holds its pressure with such patience, its cold with such steadiness, its darkness with such gentleness, that everything in this hidden place seems designed not to awaken the senses, but to soothe them, to lower them one by one into softer and softer states of attention, until the whole body begins to feel as though it too belongs to the deep, folded into rest, the way the trench itself is folded into the earth above you, impossibly far above you now. The ocean continues upward in layer after layer of sleeping water. And though that distance is vast, it does not feel lonely, only protective, as if the world has wrapped you in miles of blue-black quiet, so that no bright concern of the day can easily reach you here, while below you the soft floor of the trench remains patient and smooth, composed of sediments that have taken such a long time to settle that they seem to carry a kind of ancient hush inside them, a calm that was never rushed into being, but arrived grain by grain, age by age, until the bottom of the sea became a resting place for everything gentle enough to fall. In this relaxing story, the ocean's immense pressure no longer feels like weight in any troubling sense, but more like a constant hand of reassurance, one that surrounds without squeezing, holds without insisting, and reminds the sleepy mind that not all forms of depth are difficult, because some depths are simply quiet enough to let you stop carrying yourself for a while. And perhaps that is why the creatures of the deep feel so fitting here, moving rarely, living softly, conserving energy with a wisdom that seems almost ceremonial, as though they understand that stillness is not the absence of life, but one of its purest forms, one of its oldest songs, a song so quieted must be heard with the body rather than the ears, somewhere in the dark water nearby. Unseen life continues with exquisite patience, tiny drifting forms, careful scavengers, delicate hidden beings that do not break the peace because they have evolved inside it, and their very existence offers another gentle bedtime truth, that life can continue beautifully without brightness, without noise, without spectacle, and that your own rest tonight does not need to be dramatic either. It does not need to arrive all at once. It can gather slowly, like marine snow descending through the water, like cold settling into a room at night, like a long exhale, stretching farther than expected and leaving the body softer at the end of it than at the beginning. The trench walls nearby have softened in imagination now into dark folds of velvet. Not boundaries, but shelter. Not edges, but quiet companions. And between them, the water feels especially still, as if even the faint, deep tide we sensed earlier has now eased almost entirely into rest, leaving only the most delicate suspension, a feeling that the whole hidden valley is pausing with you, breathing so slowly that each moment extends into the next without a seam. And in such a place, it becomes easier to let the mind unclench, easier to stop arranging tomorrow, easier to allow unfinished thoughts to drift downward through the layers of awareness until they rest on the soft floor below and ask no more of you. This bedtime story has always been carrying you toward that softness, not toward an ending that needs to be noticed, but toward a dimming, a loosening, a slow return of all things to quiet. And now that quiet feels very near because the sea is showing you how to be at rest under immense calm, how to be held without effort, how to exist for a while without needing to rise to the surface of thought again. And if you listen closely, you may feel that the deepest part of the ocean is not distant from sleep at all, but strangely similar to it. Both are places where the world grows heavy in a comforting way, where light recedes, where noise loses its edges, where movement becomes optional, and where the self is allowed to drift, unguarded and unhurried, into a more peaceful form. So remain here a little longer on this quiet shelf of dreams beneath the world, where the water above is vast and the water around is kind, where the pressure behaves like a blanket and the darkness behaves like privacy, where the ancient cold never startles and the hidden life never clamors, and where every last waking thought may settle slowly through the sleeping sea until it becomes only another soft particle joining the silence below. And as this calming narration grows more distant, more blurred, more featherlight at the edges, you do not need to follow every word now. You do not need to keep your place. You do not need to hold on to the shape of the story at all, because the ocean has already brought you somewhere quiet enough, deep enough, gentle enough, that all that remains is to rest inside it, to let its stillness become your stillness, its depth become your distance from the day, its quiet zones become the quietest places in your own mind. And then, with no effort and no need to mark the moment, to simply fall asleep. And now, as this sleep story reaches its softest, shoreless ending, the hidden trench around you grows quieter still, until even the idea of the deep seems to dissolve into something gentler than darkness and softer than silence. And you may imagine that the whole ocean has become perfectly still at last, not empty, not absent, but resting so completely that every layer of water above you, from this sheltered Hadal cradle to the distant moonlit surface far beyond sight, feels joined together in one long, peaceful breath. And here, in this final bedtime story drift, there is nothing more to discover, nothing more to carry, nothing more to follow too closely, because the sea has already brought you where it meant to bring you, to the quietest place beneath the world, where pressure feels like a blanket, where depth feels like distance from every waking concern, and where the last thoughts of the day can settle as softly as silver dust upon the floor of the sleeping deep. Below you, the sediment remains smooth and patient, gathered grain by grain over ages too long to measure. And above you the dark water rises in immense and tender layers, each one calm, each one cool, each one resting upon the next with such steady grace that the whole ocean seems to be demonstrating how to let go without effort, how to be held completely without needing to resist. And perhaps your own body understands that now. Perhaps it has already begun to imitate the sea, growing heavier in the best possible way, softer at the edges, less interested in holding on to any thought that still flickers faintly at the surface of the mind. Around you, the folded walls of the trench no longer feel like walls at all, only distant curtains of velvet blue-black shadow, sheltering this final quiet zone where even sound has forgotten how to be sharp, and if any faraway murmur still exists somewhere in the world above, it cannot reach you here with any urgency, because the miles of water have gentled everything, softened everything, and turned all disturbance into something dim and harmless and far away. And so this relaxing story can slow even more now, becoming less a story than a tide of calm passing through you, less a sequence of words than a feeling of being cradled in the oldest and deepest stillness on earth. The ocean has been teaching the same lesson all night in different forms, through twilight and midnight, through abyss and trench, through pressure and cold and quiet zones. And that lesson has always been simple, that rest does not need to be forced, that peace does not need to be chased, and that some of the gentlest places in existence are also the deepest, the most hidden, the most removed from light and hurry. And if you listen only lightly now, you may feel how everything in this underwater world agrees with that truth. The soft floor receiving each settling grain, the dark water holding its steady weight without complaint, the hidden life continuing quietly without spectacle, the cold remaining constant, the silence remaining full, the whole sea becoming a lullaby too large for words. If a thought rises, let it rise and fade like a dim current passing through distant water. And if a memory appears, let it drift without needing shape or meaning, because there is no task left for the mind tonight except surrender, the gentle surrender of marine snow falling through the water column, the gentle surrender of a deep current slowing into stillness, the gentle surrender of a listener who no longer needs to listen closely because the body has already heard what it needed to hear. And now the body is answering in its own ancient language, the language of slower breath, of loosening muscles, of warmth spreading quietly through still limbs, of eyelids that no longer wish to lift, of a heartbeat content to rest inside the hush far above. The surface remains only as a forgotten idea, a distant place of moonlight and waves, and weather that no longer belongs to this moment, because this moment belongs to the hidden valley and to the calm beneath all things. And here, in this final soft descent, the ocean keeps no demands, offers no sudden brightness, asks no more effort from you at all. It simply holds you in depth, in darkness, in quiet, until every remaining thought becomes a little slower, a little dimmer, a little farther apart, and then softer still, until the spaces between thoughts widen like the deep sea itself, vast and cool and peaceful. And in those widening spaces, sleep begins to gather completely. So let the trench floor remain beneath you, smooth and undisturbed. Let the great water above remain heavy and kind. Let the last blue shadows close around this gentle bedtime in perfect calm, and let the story fade the way the deepest ocean fades, without edges, without urgency, without any need to mark where one moment becomes the next, until the words themselves seem to sink into the dark like tiny drifting particles. And the dark receives them, and the sea receives them, and your tired mind receives the message hidden inside them all along, that it is safe now to stop, safe now to loosen, safe now to drift beyond the last quiet thought, beyond the last faint image, beyond even the need to follow the sound of this voice, and simply rest deeply and fully as the ocean around you grows stiller than stillness, softer than silence, and carries you at last into deep sleep.